Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to call this meeting to order, finally. We did do a school tour at 6:43. Can I get someone to make a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
So that was Barbara
and Greg. Okay, do we have to add anything or subtract? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right, so all those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We've already done the school tour, and I have not received any Let's Talk communication. So, and I don't think there's anyone here to talk to us tonight. Okay, so we're gonna move right into some stuff. We do need to designate a VSBIT and VEHI proxy. The Barstow board has already going to be the proxies for RNESU and Barstow, so if you're okay with that, they could also be our proxy, since they're all gonna vote the same way.
Or do you want?
Unless somebody wants to go to the meeting, it's a virtual meeting next Wednesday night. I will be online, I just wasn't gonna vote. So, if the Barstow members, yes,
This is VHI.
VEHI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, VI
Actually, this, next Wednesday is VSBIT. VHI is November 5th.
November 5th.
VSBA is November 4th. And you don't have to designate somebody. You just all, I don't think we do. I don't think so.
We have in the past, I think, so,
I think it's a membership vote.
okay. All right. So is everyone okay with the Barstow members being our proxy?
Yes.
I'm fine with that. I'm more concerned with,
Oh, yeah, VSBA, no, VSBA, we'll all do that together. So, okay, so I just need, someone to make the motion.
I will move that.
Okay, and a second? Barbara's seconding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh,
All right.
I don't think I need it.
Next thing, so, we're gonna start our facilities discussion. The first one was the cost benefit analysis of giving the Sudbury building to the special education, unit. Did you wanna talk to that, Marcia?
Brenda's speaking to that.
Brenda's speaking to that, okay, well then I would love
I
to
just
hear
needed
from
this.
Brenda.
oh, okay.
Just following up the agenda. So, Marcia and I met, and there's really not a whole lot of difference. I know that the cost was shared with you all to run the building. But we do have, $120,000 and another $8,000 in two different, ESSER funds.
Yes.
ESSER funds for IDOE. So it has to be restricted to special education purposes. And that gives us an opportunity to think about where best we might invest these one-time funds for one-time purposes. And that became the conversation about, what we talked very briefly about last month at Sudbury. With some minor alterations to Sudbury and using those funds, we would be able to make the building more accessible for programs in the future and make it, as Marcia explained, a place where instead of sending students who need, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone, so jump in. So instead of sending students who need psychological evaluations, who need to go out or retreat for observation, we'd be able to put them into that program, surround them with supports, and do that, and then hopefully be able to find the right leadership for them, hopefully back in their home school. But it would give us that opportunity to really know the student and be able to service them. So we did talk about it a lot. So the kind of question is, how much is the cost benefit to it? One student going to an out-of-district placement is upwards of $60,000. So if we can prevent that by wrapping around that student with services now or services in-house, then that would be one savings of $60,000. And obviously, if we could do that, I mean, we hope we wouldn't have to do that with 6 students, but if we had students that had that problem, we'd be able to service them in that fashion. So where would we use the funds? Some of the things we would do is maybe look at bathroom facilities. so that they were not as limiting to elementary facilities, maybe they were bigger. Look at gender-neutral facilities, handicap facilities. That is always the biggest expense. And then we would also look at creating private spaces so that if you remember, because I know you were at the meeting, that sort of back classroom, we could, kind of build walls for offices. The front classroom could be used for triple E screening so that we could bring students, when we do child find in the spring, in there with our triple E staff and nurses for evaluation. Am I missing anything? So currently, the staff that we were talking about exist in the basement of the Rutland Northeast site. So they are obviously working with students most of the time when they're out in schools, but they are in our building in the basement a fair amount of time. I don't know if Marcia would be able to give you sort of a percentage or not. It's not beautiful space, it's adequate space, but, and knock on wood, it hasn't flooded lately. But, we've had issues in the past with water drainage and flooding. It's a building that was built 55 years ago. And so the drains aren't what they should be. So that's kind of what our thoughts are. I don't know if you have any more specific questions or...
Angela?
So, how often will, I guess, give me a picture of what the week would look like in that building if all this was to go through. How often are people in there? Is the building always populated? How many, is there going to be students in there all the time? Is it going to be more offices and students periodically?
So the evaluation team, the 3 psychologists, SLP, and secretary would be there. So it would be offices, so it would be occupied that way. Triple E room would be used when students come and go, so they wouldn't be there all the time. And if you had a student that needed to be in an alternative placement, they would be in the other room. It's a guarantee that there's offices and psychologists and the eval team are there, and I would have an office there. So you have people there, but you wouldn't have a lot of students necessarily, but we talked about how that building, if it was used that way, that we could do summer programming for students there, maybe some after-school programming, so those options would start to be discussed and talked about.
How many students do you feel you could, if it was used as an alternative placement for kids, how many kids do you think you could
It
put?
would only be 1 or 2 at a time.
Okay.
It's a place you go to get wrapped around, functional behavioral assessment, figure out with your team, and then they bring you back to the school and work with your team there to get you back.
Okay.
So it's not going to have a lot of children in it at once.
Okay.
Recording in
It's not
progress.
open for video.
Okay. Bill?
You mentioned the ESSER funds, at least in the beginning, if I heard you right. But what does that happen, what's going to happen in year 2? Would we be eligible for what was known as extraordinary funds after that day?
The ESSER funds would just be used for the renovation bill for just this year. Those are the funds we have, one-time monies.
Okay, operational funding.
Right, so the operational funding would exist and continue as it is now. So the staff would still be there, they'd just be cited in a different location. And under Act 173, extraordinary costs still exist. So if the student's cost during the period of time, or any student's cost during that period of time, exceeded next year at $65,000, then they'd be eligible for extraordinary. I don't think we expect that it would exceed $65,000 during that time period.
The invisible savings is that the student would be living at home, I would presume, as opposed to a residential treatment, which saves government money, whether it saves Rutland Northeast money, I don't know.
Saves Rutland Northeast money if they don't have to go to NFI or a 90-day placement at Brattleboro Retreat or down to BAC.
Right.
Or, so it saves money in regards to the placement that we would have to seek if we didn't wrap around them there, because they've reached capacity in their school. So it's a way to prevent them from leaving for the high cost.
Yeah, I'm sure the state will send you a thank you card for saving money that this will really save.
Other questions for Marcia or Brenda?
I gotta,
Greg, go ahead.
Are there any other programs like this within, I don't know, a 30, 40-mile radius? Like, are we going to be, would we be a program like that people in Addison County would seek out? Like, do they have one? Or other districts?
No one has. This Champlain Valley Academy has a roving team, I don't know where their site is, that does this kind of work, but with the population that's here, not the population that we're talking about. Our population that needs this work is those trauma children in our schools, because we have them on campus for our ASD group. CBA is doing it for their ASD group. So that's the one pilot. They won the Apple Award this year as best practice in the state of Vermont for special ed. I went to that. I learned about that. I saw that, and that's what got my brain moving about what should we do here, what could we do here, what Sudbury, you know, just ideas. So that's where that came from. That's our population in need right now, trauma in the schools, not ASD, because we have them on campus. Most districts really are envious of this site for us because of this population that they struggle with. We have this set, but we have the trauma children in the schools.
I think I've said it before, and I hope I'm not out of line to say it again, but one of Marcia's many skills is that she is able to fluidly create programs that meet the existing need that presents us in our community. And so I've been here, as you know, as Marcia has, for decades. And 20 years ago, we were not talking about trauma-based instruction. We were talking about ASD program. And, you know, Marcia's been very good at being able to say, this is our need today, and this, the luxury of this space has allowed her to be able to use it to meet that need while keeping students in our home district. And that's something that Marcia's always been good at. Before, many of you may not know this, but before the basement of the central office was used for the eval team and offices, we had various different programs in there. At least 3 of them that I can think of over that time period. And it's because we had the space, and Marcia has the creativity and the knowledge to really do what she needs to do for the population that presents itself. And it's not the same. The reason why we've had 3 different programs in there, the reason why this building isn't the old Judy Ward's program is because Marcia adjusts it to the needs of the students that, and their needs that are presenting at the time.
Angela?
So when we originally talked about this program, I was, and maybe I was off in the wrong direction, but I was under the understanding that we were trying to take approximately 6 students that were out somewhere else and trying to bring them back. Is that not true?
Conversations talked about bringing them home, but then as we looked at the money and the office space and looked at Sudbury and what it looks like and the setup, the current plan was
So,
presented to you.
so those students will still be where they are. It'll just be adjusted to in-house students' needs.
That will be in-house students. The students we talked to about, they each have individual plans, and several of them will be coming back, but they won't go there.
So we would pull those back.
Excuse me?
So we will pull those students
We always
back.
are trying to pull them back. If we could pull 2 back this next year.
One of the students that she and Brooke were talking about before was at an out-of-district placement and brought back.
2 of the students here were in residential and brought back in the trauma-informed classroom, and 1 was at an on-site in the trauma-informed classroom here. The others were at OB. But we are always trying to bring our students back. That's our goal all the time. We do well in that area. We don't have a lot of students placed out of our district. And that keeps our costs low. And it keeps them in our community and makes our lives and communities much richer and diverse because all our students belong in our own town, I think.
You mentioned winning an Apple Award. How many of these things have we won over the years and with different people such as yourself, and I know Jeannie has in other capacities, but I think that's something we can be proud of.
Well, this year I am the Administrator of the Year for Special Education for the state of Vermont. I did hold that award.
It's a history of great success is my point.
Right.
Right, absolutely it is. Okay, other questions for Brenda and,
Marcia.
Marcia? Thank you. I was thinking Jean, but I was wrong. Anyway, I don't want to make a decision about that right now because we're going to listen to a bunch of other stuff and then we can talk about everything together. Okay? So our next thing is an update on the Leicester Modular. And if you, so the update.
I'll give that to Marcia or Steve, or, I mean Brenda or Steve. Marcia, you don't have to do that one.
So we put it out to bid, and while we had lots of interest, a lot of people contacted us, asked us questions, the bid came in, not a single response came in. And then we started calling them, and they didn't even reply to our responses or calls. So we eventually did connect with them about, I don't know, a week or two later, and they indicated that, as we are all hearing in various different other avenues, that it would be the soonest they would ever be able to have construction of a unit would be January. January in Vermont doesn't work because of frost and, you know, a lot of things I don't understand. Because I think we should just be able to drive it up, back it up, lay a big blue extension cord down and be done with it. I've been told time and time again that's not how it's going to work. So we are just stepping back a little bit and, you know, we really are looking forward to your conversation about all of the moving parts because, you know, you've heard me talk about Leicester's space concerns. You've heard me talk about Otter, Neshabee's space concerns. We're talking about moving grades someplace out of the elementary schools and how that will ripple or adjust. And actually just Friday when I was meeting at Otter Valley with Jim and his team, you know, Otter Valley is now at capacity as well. There's not excess space at the high school either. So you know, it's kind of all chicken before the egg. One decision will affect the next. So our goal is to regroup, to maybe try two avenues. One avenue would be to try to go general contract and put it out to bid to see if general contractors will take it all. And then the other might be to send it out to the same 10 manufacturers that we sent the first bids to. But we know, I'm trying to push Steve that we could maybe install it over April vacation, and he's reminding me that sometimes we've had snowfall as late as April 15th, and that would be a problem if frost isn't settled. So he's pushing me back. Right? That's a fair statement. There's a lot of push and tug there.
I think if you could push it back a little beyond April, that you would be safe to start your construction at that point. You're also probably going to get better possible pricing. Any construction work that's done with inclement weather, or especially the students in there, and all the fencing and safety precautions that would have to be taken care of, is going to add to the construction costs.
But we have applied for the wastewater permit. We have done the engineering for them. We have the local town permit. We've done all of the other
one thing that we, just the hold of it is that even if we had a manufacturer that was willing to do this, to build this down the road, we need a set of stamped drawings from them to submit to Department of Labor and Industry so that they get approved by Labor and Industry, because we can't break ground without that set of drawings stamped from the state. So that is the one big hold up.
Right, that's the one permit that has been filed for, because you can't file for that permit until you know your cost. And you don't know your cost, and you get any bids on the biggest components.
Go ahead.
So how much money have we expended so far for just the permits and the engineering?
I would say, off the top of my head, maybe 5,000.
Okay,
I just got a bill.
Steve just got another
We're
bill.
up to like almost $8,000.
okay.
And so that completes the engineering of the wastewater system.
Okay. And then, can you give us an update? I know it's not on our agenda, but can you give us an update on the PFAS stuff with the water, with the new test holes that they needed?
I can. We're not a lot has changed, although we have set a date. I believe it's the 23rd of November that they're going to show up, and they're going to add five more test wells, and also I believe they're going to clean the septic system at that time as well.
Okay, so when you talked to us last month and talked about the 5 test wells, those are the same 5 test wells you're talking about for November
These are the
23rd?
same 5 test wells.
Okay.
And then the next step beyond that is to actually pull that pump out of there, lower it down, and seal off the vein. And I don't have a date from them for that yet.
Okay, and that's only if that's the only vein, and if because if these other 5 test wells show any kind of,
Those other 5 test wells are just for monitoring,
okay,
so they're not anything that we're gonna get water out of or use for
Sure.
drinking water. They're just to see how this is migrating across our property. But we do have a plan from the state that's been approved, so as soon as we're waiting on our engineers to put it all together for us, so we can start. And I expect that to be, hopefully hear something from them within a couple of weeks on scheduling that.
other questions for Jean or not Jean, sorry, Brenda or Steve on,
can I?
yeah. go
I
for it.
don't know if I missed the meeting, but what is the plan for Lester? Like, what is the, you have a plan from the state to do some, for the
For the
water?
water?
We had lead in the water, was it lead, PFAS?
Something, PS, some-
Yeah.
It's a long, real long name. That begins with P. But it's not good stuff, and it's something that the state has just barely started having us test for in our water systems. And it's not just us, it's
The whole state.
water systems across the state are now testing for it. So basically
A new mandate.
but what's the outcome, like, what's
So we
the,
haven't had water at Leicester for a year and a half.
right, but what's the fix?
Is,
First, they had to find out where it was, and they determined that it was our septic system. And so now they're looking at various different ways to fix that. And that includes monitoring to make sure that the contamination is contained.
So there isn't a solution yet, we're monitoring.
well, we do have a solution. They have, the state's approved a plan that basically is going to let us drop our pump down to a deeper vein of water that they've already tested and found not contaminated. And then we're going to plug off the other veins that are coming in there through, I don't know what they use, some kind of hydraulic, concrete, whatever, to plug off the other veins. And we will be on quarterly monitoring, quarterly testing, basically for the rest of our, the time that we use the well. unfortunately, there is a slight chance that at some point down the road, who knows, whenever, that they may find contamination again. And then they're gonna make us probably put in some kind of filtration system at that point. The one good thing is that through grant money provided by the state, any of that remediation work and construction work that's going to be associated with that is covered by a state grant.
Are we gonna have to replace the septic to stop it?
The septic, we don't have to do anything with the septic at this time.
The only thing they might do is actually take and clean out the tank, right?
Yeah,
More
we
often?
clean the tank out. And that's-
And so maybe, mandated companies or something like that. But we have, and, this has been a long process, almost a year and a half or so. So there is about $30,000 of cost that we have spent so far on the investigation process, finding it, testing it, and everything that is not covered by the grants. We have put the Agency of Education on notice because it does qualify for their emergency construction, which allows for a 30% reimbursement. Until we know the full extent of the costs that are not covered by the grant, we don't know what or how to access the information, the 30% from the Agency of Education, but we will capture as much as we can, and the rest is covered from our facility.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next item, which is our middle school model review and recommendations. Why a middle school model? And I think Allison Popa?
The middle school model is Kristen Hubert.
Okay.
Susan Hennessy. Or Kristen, I don't see Max, right?
No, it wasn't Max, it was Brian.
I mean Brian. I don't see Brian either.
He's not
Okay.
feeling great.
Okay, that's right. Okay, you have the ability, I believe, to share your screen.
Okay, awesome, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me back. And there's a lot of people on the call that have a vested interest in middle school. But definitely, as Jean mentioned, I do want to just thank Susan for her work with this. Susan's 712 tech integration coach. And she did a lot of the heavy lifting with this presentation and has a tremendous amount of middle school experience. So she just didn't want to talk. So I will do the presentation, and then at the end, we can kind of open it up for any questions that folks have about that. Go away, go away.
Looks like it's to your right. There you go.
I know, I see it. Here we go. All right, gotta love technology.
Yeah, sorry about audience. If you want to see it, you need to come up this way.
Oh, so sorry. And Jean and Melinda have this presentation as well as they have the presentation from 2018 if folks want to also review that. So
Right, we put
we're
this
here-
one, this one is placed on your agenda page of the board meeting already. And you can ask if you want the earlier one.
Thank you. So we're just here as a continuation of the 2018 conversation, really to think about some thoughts for a unified 6th to 8th grade middle school. The proposal was originally for a 5th to 8th grade middle school model to move away from traditional junior high. But we're really here today to reinforce the possibilities of the middle school model and really recommended a rethink as 6th to 8th grade. Across U.S. schools, grades 6 to 8 is the most common age range for middle schools. And that's just a visual of some of the differences between a traditional junior high model and middle school. The middle school is much more team-based, flexible scheduling, provides a lot more opportunity for exploratory and elective, much more of an emphasis on student and relationship combined with academic development. So when we think about middle school students, they really have unique developmental needs. It's a time of really rapid change along a pretty significant continuum. When we think about physical development, young adolescents have to be afforded opportunities for physical movement and serious rest. When we think about intellectual development, during adolescence, students are more interested in real life experiences and authentic learning opportunities. They are less interested in traditional academic subjects. To really foster intellectual development, students need opportunities to interact directly with their world through conversations, discourse, and really hands-on experiences, both with their peers and also with adults. When we think about moral development, during early adolescence, many of the attitudes, beliefs, and values that students develop at this age really remain with them for life. So teachers specifically that are keyed into the middle school model can engage students at this age with activities that require sense building, application of democratic principles. Teacher advisory and service learning are huge here and can really foster teamwork and serve to build community. Psychological development, really during the adolescent years, students tend to seek their own sense of uniqueness and individuality. So teachers at the middle level can really support this class identity formation, through specific curricular experiences, through varied instructional approaches and opportunities for exploration. And last but certainly not least, one of the areas that we're most keyed into, really around the system, is the area of socio-emotional development right now. Young adolescents have a really strong need to belong to a group. With peer approval, as we all know, someone who used to teach middle school, peer approval really becomes more and more important, and adult approval becomes less critical of them. Teachers have to recognize the importance of peer relationships at this age and friendship, and really provide meaningful occasions for positive peer interactions through things like teacher advisory, for instance. The research really tells us that middle grades strongly affect students' odds of graduating high school, which kind of sounds to think about. But school engagement tends to decline at the middle level, junior high. But research shows us that it's the last best chance to intervene with kids on track to drop out. Research, and we do have all this research work, folks, not that there is a specific interest to review it, but we do have it if anyone wants it at a later date. But research really indicates if a sixth grader, right? If a sixth grader fails math or English, receives a suspension or has a poor final behavior grade, like at the end of the year, attends school for less than 80% of the time, he or she has less than a 20% chance of graduating high school on time. So knowledgeable educators can really identify students at risk of school failure in these critical middle years. We also know that the middle grades play a pretty large role in closing opportunity gaps. In middle school, those achievement gaps can really become achievement chasms if we don't take steps forward to respond to it. 8th grade achievement has been well documented to be the best predictor of college and career readiness, more so than anything that happens academically in the high school years. We also know that middle schools that don't respond to students' social and academic developmental needs negatively affect student outcomes. So, in thinking about what some of our opportunities are, specifically around the transferable skills, and here they are listed out: clear and effective communication, self-direction, creative and practical problem solving, responsible and involved citizenship, informed and integrative thinking. This is a real tremendous opportunity for us. By focusing on the proficiencies of transferable skills in middle school through engaging learning experiences like project-based learning, genius hours, which is where kids are guided by their own interests and curiosity. Sometimes it's referred to as like a passion project sort of thing. Makerspaces. Makerspaces is a destination where anyone can kind of create, problem solve, and develop skills. It's like a collaborative workspace. So through experiences like project-based learning, genius hours, makerspace, middle school students' developmental needs will really be met in a meaningful way. Many of the schools that are around the state and we work with that identify specific transferable skills for middle school students to work on, really do a nice job of developing learning experiences where students can grow these skills. Also, specifically, a legal responsibility here in Act 77, right? Act 77 is all about proficiency-based learning, flexible pathways. We have an opportunity here to react to the law, right? To comply with Act 77, but do what the research and best practice tells us is necessary to support middle-level learners. Experiential learning opportunities, life experiences both in and out of school, learning opportunities within and outside of the school, and building a school day, receiving credit for learning that takes place outside of the school day, or the classroom, and student design, assessments, portfolios, performances, exhibitions, and projects. And thinking specifically about middle level grade configuration, again, in 2018, there was kind of this conversation about 5 through 8 as being the middle school model. Around the state, around the country, middle level, and really any grade level configuration, if you look hard enough, you'll find a school that matches that grade configuration. But in many areas of the U.S., middle level schools are defined by their grade level configuration, and grades 6 to 8 are often grouped together within a building for the purpose of teaching and learning. And the Vermont Association of Middle Level Educators really considers grades 6 to 8 to be the middle level years. Also, when, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, in terms of 6 to 8 being a really common age band for middle level, the state, our state standards and our national standards also recognize that as the cluster that belongs most closely together. Here's an example of the Common Core state standards in English language arts, science, and technical subjects. And you can see that they're clustered together in grades 6 through 8. And this is true for all of the content areas. So it's just grouped together in clusters because it is more easy to, or easier for teachers to naturally group those together for instruction and assessment. Just as an FYI, like for your information, these are the current middle level numbers around the SU. Barstow is thrown in there. You can see we have 15 current 6th grade at OTA, 26 at Lothrop, 51 at Neshabe. And it does show you in current year, we have 72 OB 7th graders in 96 current 8th grade students. But, we would definitely be remiss if we didn't tell you what hasn't happened from the presentation in 2018. Much of this hasn't happened because of COVID, but there definitely are some other roadblocks that have gotten in the way to moving the work forward. We're still working on common expectations across grades 6 to 8 with behavior. There definitely is continuity 5 and 6, and likely 7, 8, but there's a disconnect between 6, 7, and 8. I'm still working on student-led conferences. A bright spot for that, though, has been many of our conferences in the last year and a half, 18 months, have been virtual due to the pandemic. This actually has really empowered a lot of our students to participate to a more active degree. So, that kind of has naturally occurred just because of the pandemic anyways. We are seeing some integration between classes, but definitely not as much as we hoped for. Still working on the creation of common culminating activities, more chances for 6th graders to come to Otter Valley. If we move forward with this model, it would then be 5th graders to potentially visit. Teacher planning time is not always available. And if it is, it isn't always necessarily focused on team planning. It might be individual teacher needs, which definitely are required as well. We recognize that there are different school structures, both across our SU district and definitely around the state. Another roadblock is, especially at the current 7th and 8th grade level, there's a department versus team tension. 7th and 8th grade teachers are a part of 7th and 8th grade team. But if I'm a science teacher in 7th and 8th grade, I'm also a part of the 7th and 12th department. So there's a little bit of tension there. Many of our team building activities, especially 7th grade transition, was delayed or on hold. That is related to the pandemic. Also, OB noted a pretty significant turnover in the core teachers at the middle level. The positive side of that unfortunate situation is we lost a lot of experience in our teacher pool, but the administrators at OB were definitely able to focus in questions on middle school philosophy in new hires. And then definitely the question is, if 6 through 8 became a unified middle school, and in most buildings 5, 6 are a team, what happens to grade 5 who's left? Will there be an impact on any teams, any programs, any sort of things that the elementary schools currently have in development? And then last, you know that no matter what, with students, parents, and teachers all on the same page, working together towards shared goals, we can really make sure that our students each and every year make progress. And what we're really looking for is a successful transition into ninth grade so that our students can succeed in college, career, and life. And then if you're thinking about the research and the conversations, as is true with anything, if you do enough research or look in the right places, you're definitely going to find something that supports whatever side of the conversation you fall on. So I think just, kind of a final thought is we do recognize that, there's no magic in a particular brick and mortar configuration or a scheme. And our conversations as administrators with coaches thinking about the middle level model is that we really have to focus our energy and attention on middle grade students and their learning, rather than thinking about it in terms of how are we going to reshuffle students, how are we going to reshuffle schools and staff. We have to think about how are we going to support teachers and leaders so they can implement the proven middle level practices to advance the learning, the learning needs and social emotional needs of our students. So thanks so much, and again, a huge thanks to Susan Hennessy, and now I'll turn it over.
Thank you. Questions for Kristen or Susan? Bill, sorry.
Yes, I noticed that in your evaluation methods, the only thing that was listed was ELA Common Core State Standards. And I didn't see the measures of these things in a comprehensive fashion. And I'm just wondering, is there another layer here of evaluation and assessment that we don't see?
Were you able to hear that, Kristen? So Bill said that he noticed that in the presentation, the assessment code that was noted was ELA, and wondered if there were more layers to assessment than what was in the presentation. Did I do that right?
Yeah, there's 5 or 6 objectives there that were at the opening as reasons for being.
Yeah, you had listed 5 or 6 objectives at the opening as reasons.
Yes, but only one of them had an assessment mechanism to it.
Oh, but only one had an assessment mechanism matched to it. And wondered how we might assess others.
I'm not sure if I'm still not completely understanding what part was he asking if we had assessment for?
I think in the slideshow, in the presentation, which I'm trying to pull up.
And the objectives in the beginning?
In the objectives in the beginning, I'm pulling up the wrong one. In the objectives in the beginning, you had listed some, the unique developmental needs, that's not it. Life experiences, learning opportunities,
The transferable skills.
transferable skills.
Where it said ELA and Common Core.
That's true with the transferable skills. They are not easily accessible. But I'm not sure which slide it is either. I'm also not sure if I have transferable skills. Where were you talking about ELA and Common Core?
It's in the slide towards the end of the presentation.
Oh,
which
that's
has
towards the end.
Okay.
mechanisms, and there's a table.
Right there. We'll back up. Right there.
That one?
Oh, slide 10. It's easier to plan within a 6th through 8th grade band. you had given an example, it was just an example, of English language arts standards, and you listed a number of ELA literacy standards, but that was just an example.
Yeah, they cluster them 6th to 8th grade band for all content areas.
Yeah, so it was, you were not talking about all the ways they're evaluated, you were just expressing how the standards are already clustered between 6th and 8th grade. Right? Okay.
Yes.
Does that answer your question, Bill?
No, it didn't.
Because I don't think she intended to answer your question. That's not what the slide answers.
Yeah, it's just food for thought, is that if we have these broad objectives for what every kid is going to be and learn, then we should have mechanisms that monitors this and reports to it in a sensible fashion.
Right, but that isn't what this slide was. This slide was just demonstrating that already standards are clustered 6 to 8. It wasn't saying how we would do it. It's just demonstrating that that's already the standards that teachers are accessing are already clustered 6 to 8. Just to support the concept of a 6 through 8 versus an 5 through 8 grade band.
Okay.
That makes sense. Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Kristen and Susan, for your work on that. We appreciate that very much. All right. Let me just add balls back.
You had asked for a few presentations tonight.
I
Sorry,
did.
The tour took a while.
That's okay. Well, we didn't start on time.
Allison's
so-
going to do the
Yes. Okay. Allison is next.
middle school exploration architectural summary report.
Yes. Jean, do you want me to share my screen or?
I'm happy to.
Perfect.
If you'd
Do you
like.
want to do that? Yeah, that'd be great. If you don't mind.
Not at all.
Thank you. So while she pulls that up, when we initially started to explore the idea of a middle school model, obviously it was because of the very hard work that we just saw. And then also, for those of you that are new to the board, I know that we've talked a lot about the task force work, but it was a committee or a task force really made up of board members and community members that worked extremely hard over the course of a year and a half to engage with the community and really get some insights into what may or may not be relevant in a 2 to 5 to 10 year plan. So again, I hate to bring up COVID, but obviously that was a huge disruption to any type of planning because planning had to shift aggressively to navigate a pandemic, which we're still navigating. So some of these numbers, and you'll see here, this was done in August of 2019, this architectural report. And really, when we were talking in the task force and really rooting ourselves, it was in this idea of to provide high quality, equitable education to all OVU students at the most effective cost. And again, you can switch to the next slide, Jean. There was a lot of discussion around how do we define equity, many conversations about what equity means. I'm not looking to dive into that now, but I just wanted to sort of set this presentation up so that you guys had an understanding of why we even really started to research the middle school model. So some of those key factors, we're obligated to align student numbers with infrastructure. So we spent a lot of time on facilities to really understand, and equity comes in facilities because, if we have one school in the district with an outstandingly beautiful library versus another school in the district where, kids don't have access to the same books, or, that's just one example. Buildings needing maintenance and upkeep and bathrooms, and you're all very aware of how that sort of works. And then we have capacity, staffing, opportunities to maximize student benefit at the greatest value possible to the community as a whole. Obviously we have to take into consideration declining student populations and changes that might need to be made in order to accommodate that balance. And then, essentially we were planning ahead to meet long-term needs. So, while we might look at this and say, we don't want to spend any money on middle school right now, we've heard from people who presented and said, shoot, if we had done this 15 years ago, when, you know, it was an idea, but not necessarily a necessity, we would have saved a ton of money. So, you know, we've talked a lot about what does that long-term look like, and what do we do to really benefit the district as a whole. You can go to the next slide, Jean. So we did a survey, you know, it was about 515, I think it was 16 responses. This says 515. This is relative just because I wanted you to see when we talked to people, and it was a lot of hard work getting all of those responses. You know, people said, okay, you know, they were open to consolidation, you know, and then if we looked at consolidation as a whole, middle school is where, you know, we really felt, okay, that's where we could really benefit. We already were implementing this middle school model into the district, so how do we actually, you know, make that something that comes to fruition, and we support that effort. And so, you know, these were some of the, we'll call it statistics of, you know, the input that we received from the community. Okay, Jean. Next slide. So we can go to the next one. So the next phase in that, there were things that came out of that task force that we said, okay, what are the first steps in doing that? Well, the first steps in sort of exploring if the middle school, if we can even have a middle school at, you know, the existing campus of Otter Valley High School, we had to bring in an architecture and just get an architectural evaluation. And at that time, it was integrating grades 5 and 6. And, you know, that would be an increase of approximately 200 students. And as Jean mentioned, that's sort of shifted, and now it would be, okay, how would we integrate only grade 6 as per the, you know, presentation that we just saw. Okay, Jean, you can flip to the next slide. So there were two scenarios that came out of that. One, okay, we can have a super school where we have all the grades. So basically we expand the existing high school, Otter Valley, and, you know, really have a separate wing or a separate area for grades 6 through 8. And then, you know, there would be high school in a separate section of the building, trying to eliminate some of the crossover, you know, between grades on one campus. Okay, you can switch. I misspoke there. Geez, you guys must be like, what the heck is she talking about? So I got ahead of myself. I'm sorry. Yeah. So two scenarios: super school versus super campus. Yes, in the super school, we add some additions. Everybody's in the existing building, but we make it bigger. And then super campus, you would actually build a separate building on the full Otter Valley campus, and you would have 6 through 8 in one building, and 9 through 12 in another building, and, you know, you'd have a campus essentially in the space that's currently Otter Valley High School. So super school would require a couple of additions on the first and second floor, extending the northwestern part of the building on the first floor, and then building a second floor addition on the northeast corner. And initially they said, okay, well, can we just build up and only make, you know, focus on one addition? And the worry was that would be enough space for the influx, you know, for the increase in students. So, you know, there was like, okay, if we got creative, we could maybe do 2 additions, but there would be some structural stuff that would need to change, you know, additional supports and that sort of thing. Just to give you, I mean, this is kind of hard to see. I've been thinking about this lately because I've been doing presentations on Zoom, and like presentations on Zoom are not nearly as, you know, when you have a big screen, it's much easier to expand stuff out. But you can see the pink areas, that's where the additions would be. So you can flip to the next slide, Jean. Obviously there would be some crossover, you know, wouldn't impact the sports fields. You could, you know, sort of share the existing space, but this would possibly create conflicts. You know, with scheduling, you would need additional staff. And then, you know, Jean and I sort of spoke offline briefly. You really would, because of the amount of students coming in, you would need to build some sort of gym, locker room, bathrooms, and cafeteria space within that addition. There would be shared hallways, and you know, you'd have to see, we'd have to explore if, you know, we can even accommodate the additional square footage based on restrictions and code requirements. And I just put, will it be big enough, because that was something noted in the report. If we built these additions, because we already need more space, if we built just that amount of space, would that be able to accommodate the influx of students? Okay, so super campus scenario number 2, construct a new middle school on the campus. Initial recommendation would be to look at the south end of the property, but that would require some more digging, and it would be an adjacent any adjacent new structure would interfere with what currently the flow of the flow of the school right now. So as you can see, the dotted line, they said, okay, this is where we would maybe say you could, put a middle school building to create this sort of super campus on Otter Valley, at Otter Valley High School. Okay, so obviously this construction would require more of an expense in lieu of maybe a super school scenario. It would contain all, its own shared spaces, cafeteria, gym, library. You would need a new access road. Right now, they mentioned that there's a gravel road that leads from student parking, but obviously that would need to be more sturdy and, to be able to accommodate buses and cars and those sorts of things. And there is no electric out there currently, so you would have to run all new electric. Okay, Jean, next slide. And obviously additional staff. And then if you have staff traveling between buildings, that could create scheduling conflicts, which, and frustration for teachers that are already, probably pretty solidly booked. You need to arrange for new bus pickups and drop-offs. There's, it noted that we have to investigate the extent of Act 250. This particular project requires civil and structure engineers, and there would need to be soil boring tests to ensure that the soil could actually accommodate the weight of an additional building on that property. I think that's it, Jean.
Oh, that's why it's not moving.
Click.
I know, it's like
But,
that also.
I was asked to provide a summary. That's a summary, but I think in all, the reason that work was done was because of what we found through the task force. And then again, that would be sort of, a long-term focus that would really enhance, and we were saying it would enhance the school as a whole, even in this landscape of how do we keep our school vital and how do we keep it alive and how do we attract people to our district. Aside from all the very awesome work that you guys do, every time I listen to presentations, it's always, you just have a very solid team of people. But yeah, so that's the summary report.
Great. Thank you, Allison. Questions for Allison?
I have questions more for probably Jim than Allison.
Okay, go.
Jim, how many teachers in the middle school would actually have to share, like how many are already dedicated to 7th and 8th? And how many teachers in the middle school are dedicated to 7th and 8th and don't go into high school?
Well, we usually have the 4 quarters, so 8, 7, and 8. Then there's some few electives.
Yeah, it's primarily electives that are shared.
For the teachers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say there's a minimally of 8. I don't know if Jeff Lawrence can pull that number off his head or not.
Oh, he is on there. Sorry, I didn't see him.
I don't know if he can come up with that, but typically the electives folks cross over.
Right.
Okay.
And we ended up needing to hire a middle school health teacher this year because the schedule wouldn't allow the sharing really.
Off the top of my head, I'd have to look at the schedule.
But in the past, it had been a shared, one of the
It
electives.
might be only dedicated to middle school this semester, but next semester we move into high school.
I was just trying to get my head
There's
around.
also teachers for resource, the resource center. Are they dedicated to middle school, do you know? Sorry, no, I know we're asking lots of questions late at night.
Is Jeff?
He was shaking his head no.
There are 10 according to the middle school, at 8 FTE core teachers and 2 MTSS interventionists.
Okay. Okay.
Well, plus you also have to think if 6th graders are coming over, there's a pool of, staff there too, but it's really that 7, 8,
Yeah, I was just trying to get an idea, like how much really we would have to add for staff.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I do know that.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, that's an even better question then. Go for it, Jean.
Because we were talking internally in preparation for that, so I have a pretty good idea. We know that, well, I don't have an exact number. Unified arts and electives and intervention staff and special educators right now are all shared. So that could be anywhere from, anywhere really from 4 to 8. And then, as we noted, the library space would need to be larger to accommodate the younger materials. Cafeteria space, you can only eat between certain hours of the day, so you can't get any more groups in there, so you need cafeteria space. Gymnasium, then that could be combined, a cafeteria gymnasium, but you would need both those spaces. And then you would also need space for the additional guidance and support staff and special educators and bathrooms.
Okay. So we've heard lots of different, any other questions for anybody regarding the middle school model before I? Okay. So we've heard lots of different things regarding Lester and trailers and middle school models, and we were supposed to have a good 45 minutes to really sink our teeth in and discuss this. And we don't really have that time tonight. What I want to put out there is what I've been thinking of before these presentations, and you guys can either rip it to shreds, or you can nod your head, or you can say we want to think about it. But my first piece of this is that in hearing that this trailer is not going to be here this year, technically really at all, and the fact that I don't really think our board wanted to do a trailer anyway, I want to ask the board what their thoughts are on scrapping the trailer idea. I mean, we're going to lose $8,000 or whatever. We'll have put $8,000 into it, but maybe we really need to think about other options for Lester and Sudbury. I know we separated them at one point. They were separate. We pulled them back together because people asked us to do that, but I'm wondering, based on their space, if we need to think about pulling them apart or
You mean using both buildings?
yeah,
for
using
classes?
both buildings for classes. Yeah. So I'm not meaning pulling them apart and moving them to Neshby or anything like that. I'm not sure that a trailer is going to do everything that they need it to do, and I'm not sure that that's the way we want to go, especially as they continue to have potential water problems and or sewer problems as we go forward. So I want people to talk about that. I also, and there would be other things we would have to talk about. If we did end up splitting the school into two again, there would be some additional costs because we would have to have some additional teachers. We'd probably need an additional principal.
I'd say one teacher probably,
Okay.
but a principal. The sharing of the principals, this district has tried that over and over and over again.
And it just doesn't work.
It just doesn't work. You're never in the right school at the right time.
Right.
And then shared staff, currently we're sharing between one other school in the district, either Lothrop or Barstow, depending on the integrated arts, and Lester, but if you added a third campus, you would need to look at increasing, maybe not full-time, but increasing some shared staff.
So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that. I know you need to know about your ESSER funds, Marcia.
Not till November 1st.
Okay.
No.
But that's like
That's
2 weeks
now.
away, and we won't have our
We won't
next
have
meeting
any.
until after that.
Brenda, did we buy some time with that? Because the RNESU board did not act on anything tonight.
So we did.
Because we need the RNESU board to approve expenditure of those funds, because they're federal funds.
You have, if you're doing construction.
Yeah.
But we can and will, we have to apply for the funds by November 1st, but we have the ability to amend it. So we can apply for, and they can amend it.
And if you didn't use Sudbury for Marcia's program, I think she said this earlier, we would put those funds towards where the school psychologists are now. It's not a huge amount of money that has to go into special education.
Sure.
And Brenda and I can handle that, I don't think that's a
Okay.
big deal.
Well, so I guess I want to know what the board thinks. I mean, I'm throwing something out at you. Yes, Greg?
Two things. One, remind me what the trailer, was it gonna just be offices or is it gonna be a classroom as well?
Both.
One classroom and an office?
Brenda?
No, it's gonna be a lot more than that.
Oh, so it's a pretty big,
And to be,
structure.
to be clear, if you separated the schools, Leicester still needs improvements.
Yeah.
Leicester currently
I
does
know.
not have adequate nursing or bathroom spaces. So the trailer is proposed to hold nursing, bathroom, a unified arts classroom, an intervention classroom, and 3 private offices or 2 private offices.
How big is this trailer?
it seems
It's
like.
pretty big.
It's
Like, is it as big as the school? It sounds like it's as large as the school.
No, I'm like,
Largest
what's-
room, I bet.
It's like Whiting is being over there, what, it's huge.
52 by 20.
Wow, that's quite a structure.
And that's,
That's
so that's
not a
where
trailer.
the,
It's
That's
court-
a
not
whole
like a
house.
little.
is
that's
that where
not-
the courtyard is? Is that where it's,
It would actually be like right in front of the playground.
Yeah, I feel like the
Oh, it's
talk
on
of
that
it has
side?
been misleading. I feel like I've been thinking
Ah.
this
yeah.
thing, so
Right. I'm
now
thinking a
your
trailer.
suggestion
Yeah.
of the splitting, which I don't want to do because,
Well, and I can understand that, but
but at the same time, I mean, it does seem like we have to do something. But I wanted to just make another comment about the middle school, just
Sure.
as a reminder, when we started that talk, that was a 5 to 10 year. I just don't want people to think, oh, we're committing to like construction next year or something. We knew that this was an idea and it would evolve and change as new boards came on and we'd adapt it to whatever we needed it to be or wanted it to be. Obviously, if we had that, we might not be in the predicament of this. And that was kind of part of the solution, was we could spend money here at this centralized school and we would solve some of these crises that keep coming up because, so some of our spacing issues. So I just wanted to throw that out there, even though it is a long-term goal, which would not just improve these issues, but also improve education. And that was, it wasn't just about space, it was about education as well. Anyhow, I don't know, this is a new idea of splitting it up, but it does seem like 52 by 28 is a large structure, and
That's not a trailer,
that's a
whole
structure,
home.
and I don't know how we're getting by right now. That's, seems like a lot.
Well, that's a good point. It
Yeah.
is, it is very difficult in that building when you say you don't know how we're getting by right now. Tom, I think, is still on the phone. with
Yeah,
us.
if Tom is there, if he wants to chime in.
And how Lester is managing all the spaces?
Thank you. It's very challenging, actually, and I am enthusiastic about the modular only because it's, a temporary solution that I know that the board, had some concerns about, but, and ultimately what we would need would be an addition to the building, and the present location or the proposed location of the modular would allow, us to have that space in the short term while an addition to the building is built in the long term. One of the beauties of the modular is that it contains a number of confidential and semi-confidential or dedicated workspaces for adults and also for students, because we currently have many purposes to the multi-purpose room, and there's sometimes a lack of confidentiality of teacher meetings taking place, on the same side of or on the opposite side of a curtain, from student instruction and all. So while I regret that there weren't any bids for the modular, I would hope that the board would continue to pursue that as a temporary option while the larger option of the addition to the building is looked at. One of the challenges we don't have, since we're all under one roof, is the loss of instructional time or work time due to traveling among the buildings. when we have part-time specialists who are further challenged by needing to commute from one building to another to provide instruction, and time needing to be built in for that is very challenging. I also felt from a personal perspective that I was in the wrong building at the wrong time, and I worked among 3 buildings, and I think also that there was a sense of isolation that was felt by the classes at Sudbury, that they, while they were connected in name to the Leicester campus under the Otter Creek Academy heading, so to speak, that they did feel isolated in some ways because they were several miles away. So while, you know, I'm disappointed that the modular project hasn't moved forward as quickly as it has, you know, that would be something that it would still be a shorter solution than some of the others, and I think a more efficient solution than splitting us up again. And I know that our water situation is hopefully very temporary, and I've been very fortunate to have, you know, Steve Eaton and Brenda Fleming working on that on our behalf. So I'm encouraged about that, and we're making quite do with that, actually, that we've now provide most of our meals prepared on site with bottled water, et cetera. So we're making do until that situation is hopefully resolved, you know, at the other end of this school year. But again, thank you for allowing me to speak, but my hope would be to continue to pursue the modular option in the short term, while in addition to the building is pursued in the long term.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom?
Lori?
Yeah, Brenda.
I just sent Jean the floor plans if you want to present them and show them.
Thank you.
Floor plans of the modular?
Yes. Let me make sure it gets done.
Yeah, I don't see a Brenda. Oh, I see a Brenda. Okay. Is that pretty good?
So is this connected to the main building? You gotta go outside and then in? Huh?
It can't be.
Okay.
You have to sprinkle the whole building if it's connected.
And you have to pour a foundation for this?
We have to pour a slab.
Oh, just a slab, like a floating slab?
Just a slab.
Okay.
I pushed back on that as much as I could too.
That's still pretty permanent, a slab.
Wow. I guess I'm surprised and that there's discussion about adding on to Leicester at all. So we hadn't discussed that at all. So when they said temporary, I assumed this was for space issues and, you know.
How does bringing 6th grade out help? Does it help at all with the space issue, or we still have the same problem?
Well, 6th grade will take a classroom and reinstate one room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you could split that room into probably 2 smaller spaces. It's not a huge classroom at Leicester. So you could probably get 2 offices out of it.
Yeah, our original discussion, because it was 5 through 8, which was what was recommended to us at the time by, it's not like we created that idea, but it was helpful to take 5, 6 out for space issues at Neshabie and at Leicester. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it's not like Lothrop wanted to have 5, 6 out. That would make it even smaller, but yeah.
Neshabie has 3 grades per class, so taking 6th grade out is 3 classrooms. That would do a lot to help with their space, taking 6 grades out, of course, 2 grades out is, of course, 6 classrooms.
Go ahead, Angela.
Well, I think if the thought through the district is that this is a temporary solution to a bigger problem and that we were gonna do an addition onto Leicester School, I think as a board, we need to really look at buildings again. I think we gotta go back to the planning, because me personally, as much as I love Leicester, I don't see how we can invest that much money into adding on to Leicester rather than just adding on to Neshabie and bringing all the elementary schools, at least from this side of the district, together. Putting all that money into an old building, into a camp, other than keeping the small school spirit, which is very important, and I do understand that completely. But we need to, as a board, figure out, is it really, is it with all of our, goals of equity and everything, all our purposes across the district, is it really beneficial for us to keep a small school? Or is it more beneficial to just make a combined elementary school? And I'm not saying money, I'm saying across all our platforms and all of our objectives and all of our needs.
Greg?
I'm obviously still coming out of the task force, which I know you were on it for a while, Angela, but I'm just nervous from all of our discussions to try and start a conversation about spending a ton of money renovating Neshabie. Well, one of the main objectives was for a centralized district was to spend money more at a centralized location and to move away from, because now if you do that, Lothrop's over here and we've just put it would be a huge amount to move the whole of Leicester or Otter Creek Academy to Neshabie.
So you think putting that much money into Leicester is?
No, I'm not suggesting that either.
What I want to mention though too is that it's hard to make a sell that we need to add on to Leicester when we do have the school empty.
Yeah, of course.
So, but that's not why we're here tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here to talk about all of that, but that, I guess I got caught out of left field on that one. But Billy, did you have a question?
Yeah, there was some survey data that was presented that dealt with what you were talking about. Didn't we have earlier data that was talking about the concept of the central school versus
junior high?
Can we compare those two survey data?
I'm not sure what, I think it's the same survey data. It's Allison who presented it, but
Okay.
Allison led that
Are you talking about how many people wanted a centralized elementary school?
Yes.
That's 17%. And then there's 24% wanted a middle school model. And then there was 41% that wanted no change, and there was about 21% that
Didn't care.
wanted no opinion.
And that's 4 years old data too.
I've known that data for so long, I haven't memorized at this point. But the point was there wasn't a huge desire for a centralized, getting rid of all the elementary schools and making it all at OV. That was that idea, and there was a very small amount, but it was 17%.
Yeah.
But the point of our discussions was, after the bonds that we had that failed, was that I think our best bet as a board to get community support for anything would be spending money in a large sum would be better if it's something the whole district basically gets something out of it, which is at the Otter Valley campus.
Following that a bit, if the data is 4 years old, would it not be sensible to see what the population is thinking and what they would accept again? otherwise, if we're looking at 63% of the population are not involved in some fashion, that makes me wonder about the viability of the project and what would be viable.
Okay, so it is 8 o'clock. We're right into a good discussion and it's 8 o'clock. What I would suggest is that if the board wants to stay and continue their discussion, but we allow everyone else to go home, that's fine, but I think it's been a late night and they have to start all over again tomorrow, so I don't want to keep them. So, but what's your pleasure?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we extend the meeting for 20 minutes and see where we get, but I think we could allow everyone else to head home.
If they want.
I think I would like to stay.
You're more than welcome to stay if you like, Brenda, but anybody who needs to go home, I understand they need to go home. It is 8 o'clock.
That includes folks online.
Bye,
Right.
Jim. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Lori, our goal is to solve this issue now, though, the temporary solution.
Well, yeah, I think that the goal right now is to figure out what our temporary solution is, and we also have to be able to answer Marcia's question. So that is our issue right now.
Yep.
And,
It's
you
a
know,
puzzle.
But it's
if-
hard,
if we want to turn Sudbury into the elementary, well, no, that's not what she's talking about anymore.
No.
It's about being
Special
the
services.
special services offices and student assessment facility. I guess that's the best way to put it. Then we need to figure that out tonight so that they can determine what they're going to do with those ESSER funds. Or we could make the decision to keep Sudbury empty for another year to determine what we want to do with it for next fall. But at some point, we're going to have to answer to the community to say what we're doing with a building that we're heating and we're, doing all those things for it that nobody is using. Yes.
I'm sorry I keep talking so much, but.
No, you can talk as much as you want. Thank you for doing so.
I feel like, my first instinct is I'm glad we have that building, even though it sounds like our principal is not excited about the idea of moving students. But it is nice to know that we have space,
Right.
because we can't find space by even trying to buy this modular. My question is, last time they were split, we had the 5th, 6th grade at Sudbury.
Yep.
And he said there were some issues where he felt like he was in the wrong space. Would it make sense to, I'm just saying if, I'm not saying we're going to, but
Sure.
what about trying some of the younger grades at Sudbury? Would that building would it work better? Would they not feel as isolated or whatever? I don't know.
Are you, want to answer his question?
I just want to encourage that thought.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just wondering, because just being in Sudbury, it feels more like 2nd, 3rd grade classrooms or 1st grade classrooms to me. And I'm just wondering if the teachers would be able to handle it a little easier behavioral wise over there versus the 5th, 6th grade.
So, right, so the thing with Sudbury is that the 3rd classroom does not have a wall to make it an actual classroom. I think we could put money to actually close that off.
It's cheaper than modular.
Well, that's true. I don't, so you could have 3 classrooms over there. So whether that's, and I know that OCA currently has at least 1 combined classroom. So you could have potentially 4 grades over there. So K through 1, 2, 3, potentially.
Where?
At Sudbury.
Yeah.
Yeah, three classrooms.
3 classrooms.
Yeah.
There is, I wouldn't, there's the 3 classrooms, there's the principal's office, there's the library area, then there's the special ed room, or there's another space there. Yes, Angela.
Does anybody recall all the pushback and the uproar of when we put them all in Leicester? I really don't look forward to the community outrage of splitting them back up again.
That's why I suggested, because then the kindergarten, they've never been moved.
I know,
So we
but-
this isn't disruptive to people who've been there. And, I don't,
And we're not saying that we're doing it now anyway. If we
I know,
did this, it wouldn't be until.
So this is an open discussion. This isn't
exactly.
this is supposed to be a, throw darts at the
Right.
wall and let's not pick everybody apart.
no, it's good to bring that
So-
up, for sure.
My point is if we bring even the younger grades over, you're splitting families up, you're having mom trying to drop younger kids off at Sudbury and then having to run to Leicester to drop the older kids off. It opens up that whole can of worms again, and the community just was outraged at us the last time we did this. I just want to make sure that everybody remembers.
No, I understand that. So Marcia, you had.
I just wanted to say, if the board considers grades, if you could think about, and leave it to perhaps Jean, think about what grades fit together, because third really shouldn't be for, think about the structure.
Should be K through
K1,
3? Is that what
K1,
you're saying?
Pre-K one,
Yeah.
perhaps?
Pre-K 1, 2.
Usually
Right.
they're paired together, so it would be nice if.
Like back to
Brenda? Yep, no, that's right.
So I think this is a great conversation, and I agree with you, Greg. I think it's great that we have facilities to have those conversations about. To your point, Angela, absolutely, I remember that. The other thing that is important to think about is, does that mean we have 2 after-school programs? One at Sudbury and one at Leicester? Or do we bring the Leicester kids to Sudbury? And as you said, if we did something like that, then the Leicester families are upset that we've moved their kids to Sudbury in the after-school program. When they're at Leicester, there's a lot of things. The trailer was always intended to buy you time. It was not intended to do anything other than give you the opportunity to look at all the facilities, look at all of the options, consider just what you're doing right now. You're not to figure it out tonight.
No.
But then to also be able to reach out to your community. It was just a stopgap to give you the luxury of time. Because one way or another, you have overcrowding at Neshabe and Lucia. No matter, and that's why this is the whole downtown. If you do this and this is how it plays out. So just to, I don't think we were misleading to anyone in regards to the size or what was being proposed. And I also wanted you to see, we're not proposing a classroom like this. We're proposing a classroom. It's about 200 square feet. That is not a large classroom. And we were never, and we heard very clearly, this is not a permanent structure. So it's really, when we put it out to bid, it included if you could give us a refurbished, and if you could give us a lease price, and if you could give us, and of course you already heard what purpose you do that. So I just wanted to let you know that we do have a lot of facilities and a lot of options, and how you consider filling those facilities results in ripple changes in other facilities. And not to be lost, as Greg said, Lothrop has space.
Mm-hmm.
And it was extremely unpopular when we had a conversation about adjusting borders. So I do not envy you in this position. And I'm happy to give you whatever information I can to make it easier. But yeah, we have.
And I will say,
and
as well, Lothrop is having less space. They've had large kindergarten classes coming in. We're probably going back to a single grade model next year because of the larger kindergarten classes that have been coming in. So they've had 2 kindergartens for the last 2 or 3 years and anticipate the same next year.
Well, and that's wonderful news. Yes, Barb.
Well, I'm just wondering, are we seeing a trend yet of people moving to the area? Because I know
Not
people are.
necessarily. We're staying stable in our enrollment. We're not seeing a huge amount of influx.
Because anecdotally, I'm hearing about a lot of people, they may be retirees, they may not have school-age kids.
Or other people are thinking,
So when I put out the whole thing about splitting OCA up again, I wasn't necessarily saying that we should do that. I just thought that if it came to a point where we weren't gonna get the structure and the space is really an issue, why spend the money if we have a building available to us? That's my only reason for that. So I didn't mean to open up a can of worms, I'm a little put out by thinking that Lester thinks that once they got this, they were gonna have an addition put on. So, because we've never talked about an addition at Lester.
no, what we talked about is exactly what Brenda said.
Right.
Give you time. to
Yeah,
figure out
exactly. It's a
Right.
long-term solution
Right.
somewhere
But-
else.
But this sounds like it was that this was going to be the precursor to
Might be
their
a
big
wish on
on.
the part of some, but it's
Yeah.
not.
Okay, well, right. So, I guess at this point, we do need to make a decision about whether or not we want to turn Sudbury into, the idea that Marcia has about having a student assessment facility along with the special services out there. Or if we want to keep it available in case we need it.
And is there, no, go ahead. Is there any way, I'm just trying to think outside the box, is there any way to have both? Or yeah. I know Sudbury's not big, and I'm sorry I don't remember how much space would be required for what Marcia was proposing, but
You couldn't have both there, I don't think. So you mean like, could you move, say, 2 grades there and have an assessment classroom?
yeah,
It would,
no, okay.
The beauty of what you have is by having the psychologist there, you always have, not that they're there full time, they go out to the schools, but you always have the appropriate staffing without having to hire staff, additional. Would be recommended.
How many years, so if we were to say that we wanted to use those ESSER funds and say, yes, move there, if we needed the building back.
I think you were gonna ask that.
Well, if we needed the building back, is there a length of time we'd have to keep the special ed program in, because we use those funds from special ed?
That's a really good question. I do not know the answer to. I have to think about how to formulate the question. It is a good question that I would look into.
So my point of view would be, if you wanted it back, I would rather renovate the central office, because to move everybody,
Right.
and not have that, you're displacing special services that
Sure.
way temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather renovate the basement.
Okay. Well, no, and I understand that. I guess that was just a question of mine, is that,
And I'm answering you honestly, 'cause
Yep.
that's my opinion.
Okay, yep, Bill.
It's the witching hour, and I don't know that we're going to get to a big decision tonight. So where do we proceed from here?
Well, we have to answer her tonight about whether or not we're gonna use those
Well,
funds.
if we have to answer, then can I make a motion?
Yep, go ahead.
Brenda, yeah, do we have to answer that tonight?
No.
Right,
No?
because we're able to submit the application with the general statement of construction,
Okay,
because
It's gonna be either
to give
central office
you
or Sudbury.
the answer. However, we do want RNESU, we can still ask them to approve the general topic of
We can
construction.
still, and then,
It
All
can be your next,
You don't have to
your next step.
all right, so we can bring this discussion back at our next meeting, and hopefully it'll be just as lively as it was tonight, and we will have to bring the rest of our board up to speed as to what we were discussing.
Which I'll let you do, because
So we'll do this, I
you
know.
don't have time to talk, but you
Right.
asked for the presentation, so we're
I
not gonna talk anymore.
I will take that, time, and I will try and bring everybody up to speed, so, at our next meeting, if that's okay. And
Can
you
we-
guys can help fill me in.
Can we
Where I'm
block
messed
out a chunk of time?
We're just, so
Not
our
just a
next,
half hour?
our next meeting is just to talk about this stuff. So we've
The
already
next-
had all of
The next facilities.
facilities meeting,
When's that?
Third, whatever.
November
second-
17th.
Is that the one that's at Neshabie?
Yes. Okay. So we will have the whole entire hour and 45 minutes, okay?
Yeah.
To just really push this out. And so if you talk to other board members who weren't here, try and direct them, either, I don't know, if they want, they should really read the minutes, they should really watch this on TV so that they are up to date and up to speed on where we are, because I really don't want to take a lot of time regurgitating everything for them to be up to speed on this, because this is an important decision for all of us. Okay? So, Angela,
Can
Sorry. You're on the wrong side. That's
I ask, the board's opinion on, are you guys interested in having the district come with their ideas of what they think is the best solution to our issue?
I don't
know that I want to.
No, I'm not even saying you, I'm saying like,
Yeah.
just people that are in the buildings and people.
Well, we heard Tom Flores.
I know
Right,
Tom.
and
We got Tom's view, but,
We had all the principals here.
I mean, I guess Judy's
Whatever you
gone,
like.
so
I
we
think
can't really
you
pick
need to
her
talk
brain, because
first,
she's,
And you might not be able to decide yet, but you guys need to talk. You keep listening to us, and then you get down to the half hour of the meeting, and,
Right.
no, I agree, we have to talk.
yeah.
I agree.
And
So
then let us come tell you why your ideas are wrong.
But
Okay.
maybe that's what needs to happen, is that we need to have a discussion and come up with a group of ideas. I mean, this time is really our task force time that we had before with only a few people. Now it's everybody, because we all have to be on the same page and we all have to know what's going on. So, and we all have to make sure that whatever decision we make, whether we like it or not, that is the decision we made as a board, and we will, as a board, move it forward.
I propose that you have those options available at this next meeting, and that we adjourn.
Okay. So, it
Maybe
is
on a columns.
right, it's 8:19, so it was 20 minutes, so I would, accept a motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Okay, good night.